So next, we have one of our concurrent working groups will be novel space activities. And this kind of will talk ISAM, some of the cislunar type activities. Lee will bring that up. Space solar power, I'm hoping you all bring up. And so for the panel to set the stage, Lee Steinke will be moderating the panel, and she's with Cislunar Industries, and she's joined by Mark Scherbarth from AFRL, Sean Mahoney from Space Frontier Foundation, and Joerg Kreisel from iBOSS, and Rob Antypas from AFRL. So it'll be kind of a good big group. And then after that, we're going to go to our working group sessions. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again from up here. All right, look at these guys. Good crowd. All right, so it is late in the day. It's 3:30, your favorite time to take a little nap out there. So we'll try to make this a little bit fun. I'm going to get my notes here so I can introduce my esteemed panelists. So as she mentioned, I'm the COO of Cislunar Industries. We just flew our first hardware to space on May 6th, 3 weeks ago. So good novel space activities going on there. So Mark Scherbarth was the pronunciation, Scherbarth. He is the Chief of Spacecraft Technology Division of Space Vehicles Directorate at AFRL, where he leads a team on basic and applied research and advanced technology development. I just learned this morning that he was also briefly in show business when he starred in an Air Force recruiting commercial. So really wonderful. Sadly, it never aired. So today is his opportunity to shine and show us why he was selected for that wonderful commercial. So Mark, why don't you tell us just a little bit about what you're working on and why you're here today?
So that's true. It was a commercial. My first duty assignment out in Los Angeles Air Force Base. So in that general area, we shot it right before 9/11, and 9/11 happened and it never aired. So that was our fun fact. But my background's in acquisition, program management, some research and development, test and evaluation. So kind of a broad range of activities here and there. As Lee mentioned, my current job is I'm division chief for our spacecraft technology division. Huge portfolio in terms of space cyber, autonomy, cislunar, spacecraft logistics and robotics, missile warning sensors and algorithms, spacecraft subsystems, just anything and everything really is in my portfolio. So just quite a bit of activities. So we have our hands in quite a few things there.
Thanks, Mark. Sean Mahoney is Executive Director and Board Chair at Space Frontier Foundation and was the CEO of Maston Space Systems for a long time, but he still somehow insists that he is not a space person. Sean, go ahead and tell us about what you're working on.
Thank you. And when I say I'm not a space person, this audience is proof of that. There are a lot of people that have a lot more experience, education, and background in this fantastic field. I hope that by not being a space person, what I can help do is translate some of the benefits from space to normal people outside of the space echo chamber. So from my current role with the Space Frontier Foundation, what we are trying to do is make sure that we're identifying what are those largest things that we can do to help advance the human settlement of space. And that is in policies, that is getting a chance to focus on things that might be a little bit over the horizon, the 3, 5, 7 year horizon that companies oftentimes think about, but have to really act in the near term. And so it's great to be able to complement the government agencies and the companies that are working in space and try to make sure that we're going to have fertile grounds for whatever's coming next.
Great, thank you. Joerg Kreisel is co-founder and chairman of iBOSS and president of Confers. In both roles, he works on modularity and standardized interfaces for space infrastructure and logistics. He even demonstrates modularity with his fine collection of wardrobe pieces, including a large closet full of cowboy boots, from what I understand. So, Joerg, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, yeah. Hi, everybody. Okay, redundancy is good, isn't it? So, yeah, hi. My name is Jörg. I'm from Germany. My background is aerospace engineering. I was specializing in launch vehicle design, space systems engineering, and hypersonics in the old days, in the late 80s, and got acquainted with modularity and new ways or novel space activities, if you will, already in the early 90s, where we looked into modular systems. And then it was quiet for a while. I spent some time in the venture capital industry and kind of been involved in a lot of things, kind of like to commercialize space technologies, international partnerships and stuff. Then on-orbit servicing came up, and with my other company, we were working at international level with NASA and a couple others, DLR, CSA, JAXA, and so forth, on on-orbit service. OOS, you know, so now we've arrived after OOS, OOA, OOM, OSAM, now we're at ISAM. And at the time, I got really acquainted with, and I really liked on-orbit servicing, OOS, and had to understand very quickly, OOS does not stand for only one solution. And yeah, and then many years later, we were involved in this project iBOSS, and Thomas is here, the CEO of iBOSS, and we started that company back in 2017. And we are focused on providing interfaces to enable modular architectures, right? So to provide these USBs for space, to have others do Lego in space, basically. So that's the mission why we're here, and we're very happy to have been able to join Crew Station here in town and New Space Nexus, and we have set up our subsidiary here in Albuquerque. Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg. And finally, Rob Antypas is the mission area lead for SAML, or Space Access, Mobility, and Logistics, also at AFRL. He also appears on Rate My Professor, where he is described as very chill and gets a rating of awesome. Rob, the floor is yours.
We'll just pass it back and forth. Yeah, I don't know how you found that. That's fine. No, so I started my career in the Air Force working propulsion development for solid rocket propulsion, and then I moved to large software acquisition and development of large software systems. Came back to AFRL working in space propulsion for specifically electric propulsion, and now I'm working to connect the dots between the 10 different tech directorates on the SAML portfolio and how we can collaborate to win.
Thank you. All right, so let's go down the line here and just talk about a favorite milestone or two that's recent. And that milestone can be in technology development, can be in policy, could be in funding, just something exciting that's happened in the last 6 to 12 months that got you excited about what we're all doing.
So I think I can go.
Okay. Go.
So you're going to throw me in first. I'm excited about how the UK has embraced net zero in a way that I did not entirely understand, and how a community that involves government and academia and companies can actually move forward, and the efforts that they've put into adopting space-based solar power as a thing that is really ingrained in multiple parts of their country is phenomenal. It makes me nervous for back home, but it was really cool to see.
I'm going to go a little bit further back than that, maybe 5, 6 years, a couple activities in between there. But Space Policy Directive 6 came out a few years ago, deals with strategic direction for space nuclear power and propulsion. A couple years before that, there was a program called Krusty. It was a teaming between Los Alamos National Lab and NASA. They did the first ground test of a space reactor in about 50 years. Great data from that. We've seen some new programs, including a program at AFRL within my portfolio called Jetson, grow out of that. So we are investigating that. We are looking at those type of questions. If you heard Colonel Rayleigh speak this morning, that's one of the things that we do in the lab is we answer questions, we mature technology, and so space nuclear is one of those things where we're not sure if there's a there yet. It's farther out. We're investigating it, but really interesting to see how it progresses here in the near future.
Yeah, I think my grandfather worked the NERVA program, so I'm really interested in where that's going. I am really interested in what SpaceX is doing on the launch side with how fast they're iterating on Starship. I think that's going to be a game changer, and it's going to be leaps and bounds ahead. It's interesting how they're moving and how different that is from the tried and true and steady pace, but 100% success of Artemis. So both those programs are really interesting. And then the other one that I'm really interested in and looking forward to seeing launch is RSGS and the successful integration of all the hardware on that and preparations for TVAC. So good luck with that.
Yeah, for me, and to also share some of more of an international perspective, it's interesting to see the momentum being built in the US more and more, particularly in the area I'm advocating, ISAM. That's interesting that country set up the ISAM strategy and ISAM implementation plan. And in my capacity as president of Confers, where we are sort of developing the rules of the road, if you will, and standards, norms and behavior, both for technical items and maneuvers or operations like RPO. It's very interesting to see what's happening in this country in particular. There is similar, smaller, but also vertically very good activities in other parts of the world, which are sometimes overlooked by the US. But I think in total, we are doing very well. And again, talking about my area I'm representing here, ISAM, we believe it's moving in the right direction. And what is interesting also, for me, also having been teaching in several universities over many years, now we see in the tech domain growing business acumen. And the youngsters, so we are supporting ISU and Space Generation and all those organizations, and nothing that compares to 10, 20 years ago. So now we see business plans, which are business plans, and these kind of things. So I'm personally very confident, although we are yet facing a sort of a chicken and egg issue, facing strong yes and no camps when it comes to modularity and ISAM. But we're very confident that the momentum being created in this country will change the game around the globe.
Thank you. I'm tempted to ask a follow-up on that, but I'm going to move on since we're a little short on time. So speaking of norms and behaviors, often when there's a new program that we want to promote, novel space activity, there'll be an architecture developed and then funding provided and path to what will get funded for experimentation. So talk a little bit about, and this morning I was in a meeting where there was something without an architecture and somebody just went ahead and did a project and funded it anyway. So I want to talk about sort of the free-for-all method versus, going through the formal process of novel space technology development and planning for that versus just throwing something in and trying it. Why don't we start again, Michelle?
I get it. It is a great idea to have thought everything through. Absolutely. However, if you're talking about something that is actually novel, then why are you wasting your time trying to design the entire thing before you have done any of the research to figure out, is it real? Is there actually a customer? Is there actually value here? The idea of, I understand we have to make sure that we're not killing an involved public. But there's a lot of stuff that doesn't need the amount of let's consider every single thing and down select. We have got to be able to move more quickly. And in small companies, I had an engineer who had an idea to make a plastic engine. And you think, what the hell use is a plastic engine going to be? Because you could iterate it in a day. And so they just printed out plastic engines, had a huge cooling system. They burned through some and they just iterated and iterated and iterated. And that is the sort of thing that if it had to have design reviews and consider like all of the process to understand how is this plastic going to actually ever turn into an on-orbit block, never would have moved. So, got to iterate quick.
So from our perspective, I think this is an important part of our portfolio. We are now, at the lab, we are thought leaders. So we tend to think, okay, we got to do some work here up front and support the current warfighter. We have to do some midterm work, but we also have to do some work out in the out years, 10, 15, 20, 30 years where no one's even thinking yet. We are thinking about it in terms of what is the warfighter going to need, because they are very focused, and rightly so, on the current systems they have and making small evolutionary changes to those. We need to also think about the revolutionary changes, things that there are no requirements for, that we have complete freedom to tech push, instead of getting requirements pulled from the warfighter. So some of those things pan out, some of them don't, but some of the biggest breakthroughs we've had, for like GPS and the atom bomb and things like that, were nobody said, hey, I need that, but now they're indispensable to deterring aggression and things like that. So yeah, thinking out in the far term is very much a part of our portfolio.
Yeah, I think sometimes requirements are like plaque. If you don't brush them off every now and then, they cause disease.
Yeah, agreed. I think, just like Mark said, AFRL works from 6-1 research, basic research in partnership with academia through AFOSR and education outreach, and then all the way through 6.3 work and flight demonstrations. We do that iteratively, and we do that with an end goal in mind, but not necessarily a end technology in mind. We do that to answer questions. We do that to find the no. We do that to say, hey, this was a bad idea. Let's let the world know that that's a bad idea, or at least the US know that that's a bad idea, so that we don't chase rabbits and we don't waste money. But where we're getting, I think the publicity of new space, the publicity of these novel technologies is driving a congressional push and a leadership push that is showing, hey, what is the utility of this? Give me the utility of this, and that's requiring analysis, and that's requiring legwork to prove out what are we going to do with the technology. So the cart's gotten before the horse in that we haven't even demonstrated refueling, and we're being asked to answer what its utility is. So when we get asked those questions, we have to answer them.
Do you feel like there's good top cover from those people in DC that are like asking the questions that you want to be able to answer, that now you have like there's now a reason to answer some of these questions?
So I think some of that is, yes, there is some of that. There is a go do this, and that's been some of the CII push that's come through Congress, which is funding the Jetson program, for example, but there's other programs as well. But some of that is also pushing budgetary constraints, and then it's also a question of, okay, so now there's been a lot of publicity to this, the question of why is AFRL doing that? And then we have to backfill the congressional demand to do something with the academic push to say this is why we're doing it. And so it's a balancing act because we have to respond to multiple masters, but yeah.
due to that nice conversation, I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn on your question. Sorry for virtual people.
I was happy listening to this.
Yeah.
Well,
So Joerg, talk for just a minute about how you know something is a novel space technology and not just a new iteration of something that already existed in the past. And then when something stops stops being a novel space activity, what's that trigger point? So identifying novel, truly novel, and then how do you exit novel?
Well, let's say, assume we believe we have a common understanding of what novel is, right? So, a lot of things have gone wrong, and that's what we have observed over decades at international level. And I think a couple of very interesting points were made, and I've heard the word speed several times. So it's how do we do these things? You were mentioning what is the top-down requirements in Washington, right? We heard it this morning. And so I think it boils down to rapid solutions, and in a way that we identify the technologies and certain functionalities, applications, and so forth, and then figure a way to rapidly demonstrate. Because if that doesn't take place, the whole house of cards collapses. Right, and we've seen this in many missions, and in particular, also I can tell from Europe, from Asia, and a couple other places of the world, and we have similar things here, of course. But so I think that is where sometimes things go wrong, and so what does that mean to the leadership, both at the industry, academia, and government level? I think it's about degarbaging processes, isn't it? So that's a bit the feel we have. And on the other hand side, we see that this new procurement philosophy here in the US by the military players is moving in the right direction. And that is where a lot of other companies are still lagging behind much, right? So moving from result-oriented, let's say, reporting, monitoring, rather than pain in the ass tech top-down reporting, right? So, and I think that is a big of a problem. Also embedding the evolution of technologies into the commercial spheres, right? So that's another disconnect which we see. You know, we have technocrats-led tech development and capacity development, but still, I mean, that's what we keep hearing at conference. They say, hey, where's the market for ISA, right? So, I mean, I think we need to move to a sort of a decent way of demonstrating, getting things done, moving to the next level, and I think that's the major thing. And I could share tens of examples where these things particularly went wrong. In essence, observation. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, just given the time, and ask if an adversary were all of a sudden to become the leader in one of these novel space technologies. You know, we're the U.S. women's soccer team. We're used to winning. We're like, wait, what do we do now? Would we immediately pivot to become the leader again? Would we leverage? Would we watch and learn? What do you think we would do? Let's start with Rob.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I think it's tech dependent, right? So it really depends on the outcome of that. And to the previous question of how do we know if it's novel or if it's new space? And it's really the outcome of that. How game changing is that? So if it's something that's truly game changing, we've done this before. I would hope devote significant resources to catching up or going ahead. I think if it's something like orbital debris mitigation or something like that, where we're just watching and seeing what the utility of that is, we're going to keep our eyes out and understand where that's going and what that is. It's definitely tech dependent.
Yeah, I would agree with Rob. It's since we're talking in generalities, it would be dependent on what it is. So if it's something significant that we need to be concerned about, we marshal the resources across the government and take care of that. But it'd be very dependent on what specifically it is.
I don't have much faith that will necessarily happen. Where are the majority? Where's all the drone innovation? It's not in the U.S., right? DJI is not a U.S. company last time I checked. So it depends upon who we is. Is we U.S. government and in a military context, or is we commercial companies? Commercial companies are probably not going to say, hey, the Chinese government is doing something, so therefore we should risk capital to compete with the Chinese government. We don't want to compete with our own government, much less the Chinese government. So I think there is a potential that we cede an awful lot. And if you look at our history from a U.S. policy standpoint, we lose interest in rare earth metals, or, we have other competing initiatives. So I would think we should be preparing for a future where we might decide that we're going to cede some of these things to non-U.S. entities, because it's really difficult for us to move.
Joerg, you want to weigh in on that? No, okay, okay, he got double the time. All right, so we're gonna play a little game now, to keep things lively. And then we'll wrap up with a final question, just in the interest of time. So this game is a 3-part question for a handful of different novel space technologies that I pulled from the list that New Space Nexus provided. And for this, we're going to talk about, we're going to have each panelist weigh in on when they think they will be fully operational. So I'll say one, and the time scale is developed by pointing here for 2024, here for 2054. 2034, 2044, right? So it's just a clock from 2024 today to 2054. So, and because I don't want you to poke each other's eyes out, that's why I turn diagonally. So right hand forward, okay? All right, the second question is, will the US be the leader when that happens? You just raise your hand or you don't, okay? And then the third part of the question is, should the US government be funding the development of this technology today? A lot, kind of, sort of, and not at all. Okay, so anywhere on that scale. So 3-part question. I'm going to rattle off some space technologies. You're going to do your thing, raise your hand, and thumbs up, thumbs down. Ready? All right, do we need music for this? I don't know. Okay, so on orbit refueling. Go. All right, and will the US lead? Interesting. And how much should the US government be investing today? Okay, all right. Commercial LEO destinations. Okay, we're developing a pattern here. Okay, and will the US lead? Yeah, okay, and I know, that's a tough one. Yeah, kind of threw you for a little bit. Yes. And should we be investing today? Yes. Oh, cool, I hope somebody's capturing this. Okay, awesome. Lunar base. Oh, okay, now I was hoping you'd all use your left hand for that one. Okay, and will the US be in the lead when that happens? Ooh, and should the US government be investing today? Wow, okay, yeah, got to keep pace. I guess we were very convincing in our earlier panel. Quantum computing. Useful quantum computer. Okay, yeah, all right. And will the US lead when that happens? Oh, some late entries there. And should the US government be funding that today? Okay. Space-based solar power. Okay, and will the US be in the lead when that happens? Ooh, okay. And should the US government be funding that today? Wow. Okay. Go Peter Garrettson. Good work. And finally, nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion.
It's always 20 years out.
Yeah. Very nice. All right. And will the US be leading when that happens? Okay, and should the US government be funding that? Okay, all right, great. So hopefully that was entertaining and educational. And now I just want to hear your key recommendations for the best things to do going forward in your particular area, or that you see as opportunities on whether the technological front or policy or whatever.
So in closing out, I would say novel may not actually be novel to us. I mean, blogs were web logs that lost the first couple letters and people thought it was something new, but techies were like, this has been around for forever. So keep in mind, novel may not mean brand new technology. I think the most important thing that we can do is not try to regulate by imagination. We need to have playing fields that are set up that will allow new opportunities to grow, and most especially those that are not serving the space industry. We need to have exports out of this room and out of the space industry. And so it is important that we have protections, but we have a lot of protections. We do not need to be drawing all sorts of regulations around all sorts of imagined future states.
I'm going to bring up something non-technical, the teaming, the partnership, the collaborations. We have a lot of rules and regulations and processes to follow, getting technology done. Usually it's working through that functional process with contracting and finance and legal and all those type of things that really set us back and cause a lot of issues for us. So being good partners on that front, making sure we have good contracts written, good requirements, good, all those type of things that it takes to get things on contract so we can actually go forward and do the work would be a great help as we work together both with government and industry. That would be huge.
Yeah, I think the one thing we can do is continue to innovate and work together. As you said, it's definitely a team sport. I think that we need to beat down barriers both between the government and primes and subcontractors for that iterative process between PDR and CDR where we learn something new and we need to be able to change and adapt quickly. This market moves too fast for our old legacy contracting process, and to be able to learn something from an experiment or something that flew from a competitor or something that just comes up, that new things always come up. And between PDR and CDR, we need to be able to work together as a community, everybody in this room, to be able to change and adapt as quickly as possible, because that will give us our edge back.
Well, I personally believe that novel space activities will rely a lot on, will be enabled by the future space infrastructure and logistics. And that will then define which novel activities which we can conduct and so forth. And for that, most probably the future will be based on modular architecture supported by robotics. We have AI and all these things coming in. And so things will go modular, not only the systems, but also operations, ground segments will be modularized and enable a lot of things. And all those will then basically translate into mission flexibility, these type of things. In order to do so, I personally believe a major thing to do is come to standards. The future will look different. And we are lacking standards with many things. Just think about the normal course of business of putting an experiment in space. There's a big showstopper also for the budget of people coming in as payload integration, right? You always start from zero, right? It starts again and again. Nobody knows how to put the stuff on a spacecraft, right? So, and these kind of things, just examples. I don't want to bother you with that. So that said, I believe, and that is more like the implementation philosophy, less is more. We should come to a number of very dedicated missions, which can be executed quickly, where we see the progress, and also for risk management and all these type of things, particularly in times where also the geopolitics kick in a lot. We really need to know how to put the pieces of the mosaic together. And we see a lot of kind of overpacked missions and experiments, and these type of things, where one functionality ties into another one, and then one works half, the other one works well, so we don't know how the thing works together, right? So, and we need to move away from that in incremental steps. So my suggestion is less is more, and standards. Yeah, thank you.
MVP is the MVP. All right, speaking of MVPs, Mark, wasn't he fantastic as top billing and show business? All right, thank you to my esteemed panelists. Great job.